very solitary existence, really. I often take myself along to the cinema just for the fact that you've got other people around you.
I'm at my loneliest I've ever been in my life at the moment. 3 weeks ago, I found out that my wife had been having an affair, and within a couple of days, she moved out, and the house is so big without her.
When you're going to work, you've got all those routines, you're busy, but then I started going down the pub, you're just drowning in your sorrows in the end.
Over a period of time, I've become increasingly aware that I have many listeners who really just need someone to talk to. And I've realised that I might be one of the only people they've spoken to all day. It seems that out there, amongst the concrete jungle of tiny streets and humanity that makes London what it is, there might be a considerable number of people feeling total isolation. Do you feel quite isolated?
Yeah, I feel vulnerable in the sense of being on my own.
One of my regular callers, Jeffrey, is a deep thinker and highly intelligent, but he lives alone, and he's often told me that once he finishes work, the radio can be his only friend. So, Jeffrey, this is where you call me from.
This is my flat. I normally call you from my bedroom. We're in the living room here.
You work on a building site. Would you have spoken to anyone between finishing work and me?
Not if I come into my flat, I don't think. I mean, if I go shopping, then I'll converse. I'll make a point of trying to converse with the checkout people. But I could be from about 7 o'clock onwards, I could easily be on my own till I go out of the flat the next morning. Most of my social life, if I'm honest, revolves around the people I meet at work. Years and years ago, quite often people would socialise after work. They'd say, let's go down the pub. People seem to drive off now after work, jump into their cars, drive off to their various, home abodes, and there's no kind of impulse to nip down the pub. The last thing I want to do is to go home immediately to flat on my own.
It seems my late-night callers are not rare. BBC London 94.9 commissioned a poll of 1,000 Londoners, and the results are staggering. A quarter of us go more than a day without speaking to someone we know other than a work colleague on a regular basis, and it's affecting the capital's health, both physically and mentally.
We know that actually people who are lonely experience poorer mental and physical health. Mental health, they can get depressed, they can get anxious, they can get, for example, they don't sleep very well, things like that. On the physical health side, we actually know it's complex, but we know there's a reaction which means that your immune system doesn't work as well and you might be at higher risk of cardiovascular disease.
What are the main reasons for loneliness?
Number of reasons. Bereavement, when you've lived with somebody for many, many years and they pass away. Unemployment can make people lonely. They might have worked in an office for many, many years and got a lot of friends there, but they become unemployed or they retired and all of a sudden they're by themselves at home. And what we might call the empty nest syndrome, which is where you've had a sort of big active family around you all the time and all of a sudden your children move on. And suddenly you're in that big empty house and you're by yourself and you're not used to it.
He's my son. I miss him. He's like my pride and joy. When I see the chair that's empty, his bed where he slept in, his slippers that he left behind, then I feel lonely. He's so much in my heart, darling, I can't tell you, even though I talk to him.
That is one of the most moving calls I have ever received. But I don't have children myself, so this empty nest syndrome is quite difficult for me to understand. Celia Dodd is a busy writer and journalist. She suffered it and has actually written a book about it, so she should be able to enlighten me.
You know how it feels to have your heart broken? Well, that's how it feels. You feel as if something's been wrenched from you because it's been physically from when you're pregnant, it's part, your child is part of you. And when they go, you feel a physical wrench. I had quite a busy social life. I had a really great job. I loved my job. But I think the thing is that when the people really close to you aren't with you, the people who are close to your heart aren't with you anymore, then you can feel lonely. It doesn't matter how many people you've got around you. It doesn't matter whether you're in a great big crowd. When the people who you really, really care about and you've lived with for 20 years aren't there anymore, then it's, you feel a great sense of loss. And loneliness.
So you can be busy and successful, but still feel alone. And worryingly, more than a quarter of Londoners feel that there's no sense of community in their local area.
You can be in a crowd and still feel very lonely, like you can be in a marriage and still feel very lonely at times. And we know that London is a big, vibrant city, which a lot of people love being in, but it's also quite a big, scary city.
And of course, it's expensive.
The fact is, if you haven't got a high income, if maybe you're unemployed, you're on benefits, it's not easy to think about going out of an evening to have a restaurant meal with friends. That'll cost you a bit. So if you are short of money, that will encourage you to stay at home, maybe just turn the telly on, turn the radio on. But that does make you more socially isolated.
So not having a job makes you lonely, and that includes retirement. Over in Eltham, there's a project called Men in Sheds that's designed to get blokes used to working out of the house.
I was indoors and looking at four walls and getting fed up, and, you know, because I'd been retired now 10 years. You miss the camaraderie, you know, the telling jokes, you know, and all the banter. You miss the getting up in the morning, the purpose. And you sit in the armchair and you feel yourself growing old.
My wife died in 1987. I got married again, remarried. In 2003, she chucked me out, and since then I was on my own. You go into some sort of depression when you're on your own. You've got nothing to do, you don't know what to do, you sit indoors or go shopping. No, it's awful, it's an awful feeling. I do 4 days here, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday or Friday. It's a different life now we're here, because we all have a laugh and a joke. It's just like a big club.
We've made wheelchair ramps for the community. We've just made a bridge. That's the sort of things that we're doing. I'm 71. Blood pressure's gone down. Health-wise, I'm feeling 100% better.
What a great idea Men in Sheds is. And the results of our poll showed that over 60% of the people asked would be likely to get involved in a local community scheme to escape loneliness. It's a nice idea, but a few of the voices coming across the London airwaves are a long way from that at the moment.
Nobody calls now, you know, it's very, very, very rarely, and it's I'm coming to the end, Joe.
To be honest, some of my listeners almost break my heart. But if you are feeling lonely in this great big city of ours, don't forget there are always people and places out there who can help.
If you struggle with loneliness or are affected by any